What it is, what it do, cyber world. It is your girl, the one, the only, Ash Said It. AshSaidIt.com, AshSaidIt.com. Welcome to the Ash Said It Daily Podcast Show. I appreciate you guys for all of your love and support. Over 1,600 episodes and 500,000 streams worldwide. None of that would be possible without all of your love and all of your support. So I appreciate you guys so very much. And yes, we are well into springtime. The flowers are blooming. The trees are absolutely gorgeous out. And it's also time to clean up some of your eating habits, all right? March the 26th is National Spinach Day. And here to celebrate with us and to talk a little bit about our green leafy friends is the head of nutrition from Nucific, Dr. Lee. Hey, Dr. Lee.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. So, Dr. Lee, what part of the country are we talking to you from?
I'm in Orange County, California.
Oh, okay. Cool. Beautiful weather year-round. I'm totally jealous.
It is sunny here, so.
Oh, my goodness. I'd imagine. All right. So, Dr. Lee, all right. Why is spinach so important? Like, why is it so important to our diets?
Well, first of all, I think spinach is everywhere. So it's one of those veggies that is very familiar to our current everyday culture here in the U.S. So it's easily accessible and it's relatively cheap, and so it's totally easy to eat. And also there's different variations of preparation as well. You can eat it raw, you can eat it cooked. So I think that's why spinach is so popular, and definitely one of those things where if you haven't taken on spinach before, it might be a good time to start.
Yes, definitely. So how would you suggest for someone who maybe isn't so familiar with spinach and maybe they haven't had it too much during the pandemic, how do you suggest that they incorporate more spinach into their diet?
Well, first of all, make sure you know what spinach looks like. And the good thing is you can go to the store and obviously it usually is like black and white letters and it's pretty obvious. And then try just a little bit of it and see how you like it. You know, I've known people who like it only raw. Some people really only like it cooked. So it really comes down to your own personal preference. But the great thing about spinach is that it's a bland tasting. Also, some people describe it as earthy tasting. But really it's kind of bland, so therefore you can kind of mix it into a lot of different dishes, and it's great in how it absorbs, any flavors that is part of your sauces. Or you can hide it in your smoothies, and that's one of the most popular veggies to put into protein smoothies for a lot of people, because you don't taste just spinach, right? You can hide it with something that's sweetened, like a green smoothie, for example. It's super easy to use pineapple or even bananas, and it takes over the taste of spinach.
That's a good point. So how do we optimize spinach absorption in our foods, like what we're preparing and what we're cooking?
Sure. Surprisingly, just because you eat a lot of spinach doesn't mean you're going to acquire all the nutrients and vitamins from this plant, because of the innate nature of the fibrous tissue of the plant itself. So there's something in spinach that's called oxalic acid, or what we call phytates, which is a class of material in the fibrous plant or in the leaf of the plant that actually prevents our body from absorbing everything up front. And so just because we know that spinach has a great high level of calcium and iron and folic acid, it doesn't necessarily mean that our body will actually see all of that once we eat it. So some of the tricks in really optimizing the absorption of these types of vegetables, and when I say spinach, I also kind of am inferring or implying like other green leafy fibrous vegetables as well. Pretty similar in that nature. What you want to do is just cook it down a little bit, but don't cook it to death. You know how we, sometimes we just boil things or saute things, especially vegetables, and then it comes out super soft and soggy. Well, in those cases, you probably just overcooked it. But when, a lot of people who have had experience with spinach, a lot of times, once you cook it, it cooks really quickly. So really, it doesn't need to be in a pot for more than a couple of minutes. But the act of cooking it at high heat actually breaks down some of those phytates that I talked about, or the azelaic acid that prevents your body from absorbing all the great nutrients. So lightly cooking it, it's great, but if you want to eat it raw, that's totally fine as well. I think it's just the nature of incorporating a little bit more vegetables in any way or form that it's just by nature improvement of your fruits and vegetables. So don't shy away from the veggies just because, you have to cook it down a little bit, but you can also just eat it raw too.
Gotcha. Now, what about color when you're cooking spinach? Like, if it turns if it's a darker green, is that like, have I overcooked it? Do I need to just make sure that I'm taking care of the texture of it? How do I tell if I've overcooked spinach?
So when you cook vegetables in general, and when it comes to spinach, you notice that once you lightly cook it, it becomes a little bit more green because you're really kind of removing the water out of it, so it becomes a little bit more concentrate. But if you continue on cooking it for many more minutes, it actually becomes like that weird grayish color because now you're actually just kind of using the hot water or the hot oil in basically bringing out even the color pigment of the plant itself. So once you see the vibrant colors or changing colors, then likely you are sort of traveling into the overcooked category. So play with it, use, the first time you cook it, try a couple minutes versus 5 minutes versus 10 minutes, and then you'll come to realize that transition in color usually happens within a certain time frame. And I definitely wouldn't cook anything for too prolonged period of times when it comes to vegetables, just to stay away from that and, to avoid all the soggy texture. I'm a big fan of the crunch and a little bit on the al dente side on things. So it all comes down to your personal preference as well.
Okay. All right. So could you share with us maybe a recipe or two, an easy recipe or two that we could try at home that involves our wonderful green leafy friend, spinach?
Yeah, well, if you can tell by my name, I'm Asian, so I always like my veggies somewhat lightly sautéed, but not super soggy. So I have a recipe that I really love, which is what I call pickled spinach with sesame oil. Super simple. I actually kind of got inspired the first time when I went to a Korean restaurant out here in LA, and they have all these little side dishes, and I'm not quite sure you guys have a bunch of Korean restaurants up there.
Yeah.
But of that, what I enjoy about this dish is that it really doesn't require any cooking. What you want to do is you start with raw spinach, you wash it with water, obviously, and just to clean off the dirt, because these types of plants actually grow really close to the dirt, and so it picks up a lot of grime and dirt. So wash it in water, and once it's washed, somewhat dry it. You don't have to pat dry it, but just drain off the excess water, and then you sprinkle salt on top of this raw spinach. Now, 5 minutes later, as you start squeezing the leaves, you realize it becomes a little bit waterier because the salt actually draws the water out of your spinach leaves. So you do it until you can squeeze it into a little ball. And it'll shrink down. And this is, the bottom line. There's a lot of water in spinach. So you can actually take out all the water. And now, in a way, the salt is actually cooking the spinach a little bit for you. Okay? Now, drain all the salty water, and your water will become green because some of the pigment of your spinach leaves will also come out as well. Squeeze out all the water as good as you can with your hands. And then once it's in these dry little ball clumps, the great thing is now that's just when you put in all the seasoning. I'm a big fan of the pure sesame oil, super pungent in a lot of Asian cooking. You put in like a tablespoon of that for, a good one bunch of spinach that you typically buy at the store. You don't have to add more salt to it because there's still there's still a little bit of salt that's lingering from your previous process. So you put the oil. I put a couple tablespoons of rice vinegar, white rice vinegar, or just regular vinegar as well. The acid in vinegar actually brings out the iron in your spinach. So interestingly, it's a lot of times when you order salads in general, you notice that there's a lot of pairing of fruits and citrus to spinach and vegetables because by nature, citrus actually increase absorption of vitamin or the iron in your fruits and vegetables, and typically it's the vitamin C, which is the citric acid, that does that in your body. It's kind of interesting. Wow. So knowing that, I decided to put the vinegar into the spinach, so when I do eat it, it will capture the iron from the spinach itself. And then, of course, I also put in a little bit of scallions, spice up a little scallion first, just for another punch of, flavor. Right. And then mix it up. Some people do add a little sweetener, but I personally just stay away from sugars in general. So then you mix up all the ingredients that I just mentioned, and now you got this little cold salad that you can pair that with proteins and whatever else you want, or just eat it straight. Right. So that's one of my top recipes that I prep all the time for my husband and I, because it's easy and it's quick and it requires no cooking whatsoever. But my second recipe is pretty straightforward too. I like eating my salads raw, and I also embrace, a lot of proteins and whatnot. So, go and buy your bunch of spinach like you typically do, wash it just like before, and then, of course, you top it. You top it off with good oils, proteins. My big protein is usually either a nice fillet of salmon, grilled salmon, or grilled chicken. Something of your hand size, palm size. That's usually about 4 ounces. Then I top it with things that add sweetener to it, which is like berries and apples. These are your nature's candy that add sweetness without all the calories and sugar. So use that as sweet, and even dried cherries is one of my favorites. And then, of course, other things such as like nuts and almond slices that obviously adds on to a little bit of fiber and proteins, and of course a crunch, because the spinach tends to be a little bit soft. So you got your little crunchies, and then I top it off with straightforward olive oil and balsamic vinegar, and that's it. The oil itself is a good fat, so in any spinach salad, it's always nice to sort of kind of, drizzle that over your green leafy lettuce or spinach, because then you get your good fats along with that. And it does bring up the flavor of your veggies, too, when you put oils and things. And so that's really my simple salad, straightforward. You got all the macronutrients, and it's a meal replacement, so you'll feel full. Yes. So these are my top two recipes.
I love it, Dr. Lee. You got me so pumped up to go make some salad, some spinach salad now. Wow, like that's really, like, especially the first recipe, I've never heard of spinach prepared like that. So I'm absolutely gonna try that today. Wow, I'm totally
it's pretty fun.
It does,
and it's easy.
Yes, yep. I like that. Easy. I don't want to spend 12 hours in the kitchen cooking. I'm not my grandmother.
Yep, I hear you.
So, Dr. Lee, if people need to get in contact with you, or if they want some more information about all the wonderful things that you're doing and all the different titles that you hold and ways that you can help people to stay healthy, how do they need to reach out to you, or how can they find out more information?
So I am the head of nutrition for a company called Nucific, so Nucific.com. You can find me there, lots of content and blogs and information on nutrition in general, but I also do have my own private website called DrAmyLee.com, and you can email me and reach out to me there as well.
All right. I love that. Much more success to you, Dr. Lee. I look forward to chatting with you again in the future about more stuff.
Yes.
But we definitely, want to celebrate, of course, National Spinach Day. That is March 26th. I appreciate you guys for all of your love and support. Keeping in mind, anyone to tell you that you can't do what you want to do. You look them square in the face. You tell them, don't believe me. Just watch. Watch what I do. Watch me make it happen. Watch me make history. That's what we're doing this for, the history books. Social media is nice, but real life is so much better. Until next time, you guys.